Here is the prophet Elijah lying on the ground beneath a solitary tree, far from the crowd, far from the noise, far from the fire that fell just days earlier. There are no witnesses now, no altar, no shouting voices, no spectacle, only a man, face pressed toward the dust, shoulders heavy with exhaustion, whispering a request he never thought he would speak. Enough, take my life. This is Elijah, not the prophet standing tall on Mount Carmel, not the man who challenged a nation, not the voice that summoned fire from heaven. This is Elijah after the moment everyone remembers, after the victory that was supposed to change everything. The Bible does not slow down here. There is no long explanation, no dramatic pause to prepare us for the fall. One verse earlier, Elijah is at the height of his calling. One verse later, he is running for his life. And now, under this tree, he is asking God to let it end. That alone should stop us. How does a man who watched fire consume an altar, stone, dust, water, and all, end up here? How does someone so certain moments ago become this quiet, this worn, this undone? The threat that drove him here was only a message, a sentence spoken by a queen. No army, no chase scene, just words. And yet those words were enough to push him past the edge of his strength. Elijah does not argue with God now. He does not ask for justice. He does not ask for another miracle. He asks for silence to be final. And here is the detail most people miss. God does not answer him immediately. There is no fire this time, no thunder, no reassurance spoken into the air. Only the stillness of a wilderness and a prophet who feels finished. Which raises a question far more unsettling than a miracle on the mountain. How does someone survive spiritual victory, only to collapse afterward? And what does it mean when God, who spoke so loudly before, chooses not to speak now? Because what happens next in Elijah's life does not begin with power. It begins with quiet, with rest, with unanswered expectations. And if that silence had a purpose, if that quiet moment under the tree mattered more than the fire that fell from heaven, then we may need to rethink what we assume God is doing when everything suddenly goes quiet. What if the most important moment in Elijah's life wasn't when God spoke loudly, but when he barely spoke at all? To understand how Elijah reached that tree, exhausted and alone, we have to step backward, away from the wilderness, and return to the world he came from. This is the northern kingdom of Israel in the reign of King Ahab. On paper, it is a functioning nation. There are cities, markets, roads, and armies. Life continues. Crops are planted. Trade moves. People wake, work, and sleep. But beneath that routine sits a fracture that touches everything. Israel is divided, not by borders, but by loyalty. On one side is Yahweh, the God who brought them out of Egypt, whose law shaped their identity. On the other is Baal, a god imported through power, politics, and convenience. Ahab, the king, does not merely tolerate this division. He formalizes it. Through marriage to Jezebel, Baal worship is no longer private or hidden. It is funded. It is defended. It is placed in public view. Altars rise where none existed before. Prophets are appointed by the state. Faith becomes policy. And with that shift comes fear. Not the kind that causes panic in the streets, but the quieter kind. The fear that teaches people when to stay silent, when to look away, when not to ask questions. In this world, Elijah appears without introduction. There is no record of his upbringing, no family history, no explanation for why he was chosen. Scripture simply says Elijah the Tishbite. No rank, no credentials, just a man who speaks because he has been told to speak. And that alone makes him dangerous. Elijah's role is not to comfort the nation. It is to confront it. He does not blend into the system. He does not negotiate language. He stands in front of a king who controls armies and declares a drought in the name of a god the court is trying to replace. There is no applause for this kind of obedience. No allies waiting nearby. No safety net. Every word Elijah speaks carries consequence. To follow God here means isolation. It means being misunderstood. It means becoming a problem people wish would disappear. And yet Elijah speaks. Not because he enjoys conflict, not because he seeks attention, but because silence, for him, is not an option. This is the pressure he carries long before Mount Carmel. The weight of being the lone voice in a culture that has decided faith should be flexible. Day after day, Elijah watches compromise become normal. He watches worship become performance. He watches truth turn into inconvenience. And when God finally commands him to step into the open, to stand before the nation and call down a decision, Elijah does so believing something very human. That one moment will be enough. That one undeniable sign will settle the question. That fire from heaven will change the direction of the people. That clarity will bring peace. It is a reasonable expectation. After all, if God answers in such a public way, what room is left for doubt? But that assumption, that one miracle should fix everything, is part of what makes the aftermath so heavy. Because Elijah is about to learn that obedience does not always lead to relief. That truth, even when proven, can still be resisted. And that standing alone once does not guarantee you won't stand alone again. This is the world Elijah walks out of and carries with him, into the fire, into the silence, and eventually into the wilderness where we first found him. The mountain is already crowded before Elijah arrives. Mount Carmel rises as neutral ground, a place chosen not for comfort, but for visibility. From here, the confrontation cannot be hidden. What happens on this slope will be seen, remembered, and carried back into the cities below. Hundreds gather. Some arrive curious. Others arrive cautious. Many arrive already decided. Opposite Elijah stand the prophets of Baal, numerous, confident, supported by the crown. Their presence fills the space. Their voices carry. Their certainty is loud. Elijah stands alone. No guard, no banner, no reinforcement. Just a man, an altar, and a challenge that leaves no room for reinterpretation. The terms are simple. Too simple to escape. 2 altars. 2 sacrifices. No fire. The God who answers will be acknowledged. Morning passes into afternoon. The prophets of Baal call out. Their voices rise and fall in repetition. They move around the altar, performing, insisting, repeating names that do not answer back. Nothing happens. The silence stretches. The crowd shifts. Time itself becomes part of the test. Elijah does not intervene. He watches. When he finally speaks, it is not rushed. He rebuilds an altar long neglected, stone by stone, according to the old ways. He prepares the sacrifice. Then he does something that makes no practical sense. He orders water to be poured over everything. Once, again, and again. The ground absorbs it. The altar darkens. The sacrifice is soaked beyond recovery. There is no urgency in Elijah's voice when he prays. No performance. No extended speech. He asks to be heard so that the people will know. And then it happens. Fire falls. It consumes the offering, the wood, the stones, the water, even the dust beneath it. The crowd reacts instantly. Fear and recognition collide. Voices that were silent moments earlier now speak in unison. The conclusion feels settled. The question appears answered. This is the moment stories usually end. But Elijah does not linger. He moves quickly, decisively. The momentum carries him forward. The sky darkens. Rain finally comes after years of drought. The air shifts. Relief spreads across the land. And then, something unexpected. Elijah runs, not away from the moment, but through it. Strength carries him ahead of the king's chariot as they move toward Jezreel. It looks like triumph. It feels like alignment. Prophet and nation moving in the same direction. This is where Elijah likely believes the change has begun. That the line has been drawn. That resistance will collapse under clarity. That what happened on the mountain cannot be undone. But victory on a mountain does not dismantle power in a palace. While Elijah runs ahead, another message is already being formed. It does not arrive with noise. It does not arrive publicly. It is not delivered on a battlefield. It comes as a sentence, a promise of death. From Jezebel, no argument, no debate, only certainty. And just like that, The energy shifts. The man who faced hundreds without flinching will soon flee from words spoken by one person. Because Mount Carmel proved who God was, but did not make Elijah safe. And that realization, the space between divine power and human consequence, is where the rise begins to tilt towards something far more personal. Elijah does not argue with the message. There is no recorded protest, no attempt to return to the mountain, no appeal to the crowd that only hours ago stood in agreement. He runs. The shift is immediate. The prophet who spoke before kings becomes a moving figure on open ground, choosing distance over confrontation. Each step carries him farther from the place where fire fell and deeper into uncertainty. This is not cowardice. It is depletion. Victory demanded everything he had. Now there is nothing left to draw from. Days blur into distance. Towns pass without pause. Familiar paths give way to emptier land. The further he goes, the quieter the world becomes. Eventually, Elijah leaves his servant behind. That detail matters. The journey becomes solitary by choice. No one to explain to, no one to reassure, no one to witness what comes next. When he stops, it is not in a city, not an altar, not in a place associated with calling or strength. It is under a single tree in the wilderness. A broom tree, sparse, unremarkable, offering shade but little comfort. Elijah sits, then lies down. This is the first time in the story where he does not move forward. And there, in the open, he speaks to God again. Not with challenge, not with authority, but with honesty stripped of form. I have had enough. The words are brief. They carry no explanation. They do not ask for rescue. He does not say he is afraid of dying. He says he is tired of living like this. The exhaustion is not physical alone. It is the weight of expectation unmet. The realization that obedience did not bring relief. That clarity did not bring safety. That standing firm once does not guarantee rest afterward. Elijah measures himself against those before him and finds no distinction. I am no better, he says. And then silence. No response. No correction. No lecture. God does not remind Elijah of the fire. God does not list his accomplishments. God does not question his faith. Instead, something small happens. Elijah falls asleep, and when he wakes, there is food beside him. Bread, water, nothing symbolic, nothing dramatic, just enough. An angel's voice tells him to eat. No sermon, no command to return, only provision. Elijah eats and lies down again. This pattern repeats. Sleep, food, stillness. Only after his strength begins to return does direction come. This matters. Before revelation, there is rest. Before explanation, there is care. Before assignment, there is recovery. God does not treat Elijah as a failure. He treats him as someone who has reached his limit. And from that place, where ambition has quieted and expectations have collapsed, Elijah will be led not back to a crowd, but deeper into a journey that will reshape how he understands God's presence altogether. The fall, it turns out, is not an ending. It is a pause. And pauses in this story are where the most lasting changes begin. After Elijah eats, he does not return north. He does not circle back toward the cities. He does not seek refuge among people who once listened. He walks south. Day after day, the land stretches open before him. Familiar roads fall behind. The landscape thins. Markers of civilization disappear. What remains is distance and time. The journey lasts 40 days and 40 nights. The text offers no commentary on this number. It simply states it and moves on. But it should give us pause. 40 days and 40 nights is not a measure of convenience. It is not a casual detail. It is a duration tied to testing, transition, and encounter. And then there is the destination. Mount Horeb, not a random mountain, not the nearest place of shelter, not a strategic hiding place. Horeb is the mountain of God. This is where Moses once stood before a bush that burned without being consumed, where a shepherd encountered a voice that changed the course of a nation, where law was given, where presence was made known. Elijah is not wandering. He is returning to ground already marked by encounter. to a place where God's voice once reshaped history, to the mountain where answers were given when everything else failed. This reframes the journey entirely. Elijah is not running anymore. He is searching. The distance becomes intentional. The solitude becomes focused. Each step carries a question that has not yet been spoken aloud. What now? By retracing the path of Moses, Elijah is placing his own story within a larger one. He is measuring his moment against generations before him. He is asking, without saying it, whether the God who spoke then will speak again now. This is what overwhelmed faith often does. When clarity fades, it looks backward. When certainty collapses, it returns to foundations. When the present offers no answers, it seeks places where God once revealed himself clearly. Elijah reaches Horeb and enters a cave. Once again, the story slows. No crowd waits outside. No fire descends. No immediate instruction follows. Only a prophet, alone, standing on ground saturated with memory, waiting to see whether the God of past encounters will meet him in the present. And the question hanging over the mountain is not whether God can speak. It is how he will choose to do it this time. Elijah remains in the cave. Stone walls surround him, worn smooth by time and silence. Outside, the mountain stands as it has for generations, unchanged by kings, untouched by arguments, unmoved by urgency. This is Horeb, the place where God once announced himself with fire and law. The place where boundaries were drawn and identity was formed. The place where power was undeniable. And here, God speaks again, not with instruction at first, but with movement. A wind passes over the mountain, strong enough to tear at the rock itself. Stone cracks. Dust lifts into the air. The sound fills the space, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. But the Lord is not in the wind. The ground begins to move. The mountain shudders. Stability disappears as the earth shifts beneath it. This is the kind of force that demands attention, the kind that changes landscapes. But the Lord is not in the earthquake. Then fire passes by, not falling like it did on Carmel, not consuming an offering. It moves across the mountain, visible, undeniable, familiar. But the Lord is not in the fire. Each display echoes Elijah's past experiences. Wind, earth, fire. All of it resembles moments where God once acted openly and decisively. And yet, this time, they pass without meaning. Then comes the quiet, not an absence, but a presence so restrained it could be missed. A voice, low and measured, barely carried on the air. Elijah hears it, and he responds immediately. He pulls his cloak over his face and steps to the entrance of the cave. The gesture is instinctive, reverent, precise. He recognizes this moment not by volume, but by weight. This is where God is. The question spoken to Elijah is simple. It is the same question asked before. What are you doing here? But now, the context has changed. The lesson is unfolding without being announced. God is not teaching Elijah how to display power. He is teaching him how to recognize presence. The mountain did not define God. The forces did not contain him. The spectacle did not reveal him. Clarity arrived quietly. This is where maturity begins. Not when faith is loud, but when it listens. Not when answers overwhelm, but when they are received. Not when God proves he can act, but when the servant learns how to remain attentive without display. Elijah's understanding of God is being reshaped. The fire was real. The wind was real. The earthquake was real. But none of them were the point. The voice was. And in that moment, standing at the edge of the cave, Elijah learns something that will stay with him long after the mountain fades from view. God does not always announce himself the way we expect. And sometimes, the most important instruction arrives in a tone quiet enough to require our full attention. Elijah's story does not end on the mountain. In many ways, it begins to echo beyond it. Because what he experiences at Horeb is not limited to prophets or ancient terrain. It touches something familiar, something that surfaces whenever effort outweighs assurance. There are moments when everything appears to be done correctly. The commitment was real. The decision was costly. The outcome seemed clear. And yet, The feeling that follows is not relief, but emptiness. Elijah did what he was asked to do. He spoke when it was dangerous to speak. He stood when standing meant isolation. He watched the outcome unfold exactly as promised. And still, he found himself alone, worn, and unsure of what came next. That tension is recognizable. There are seasons where obedience is met not with applause, but with pressure, where clarity in one moment leads to confusion in the next, where the effort expended exceeds the reassurance received. Elijah prayed for clarity and encountered quiet, not absence, not rejection, but restraint, and that distinction matters. Silence, in this story, is not a withdrawal. It is an invitation to slow down, to recover, to listen differently. God does not rush to fill the space Elijah is in. He allows it to exist, because exhaustion often masks itself as doubt, and fatigue can distort even the clearest calling. Breakthroughs demand energy. They take focus, resolve, and courage. But once they pass, there's often a cost. The body feels it. The mind feels it. The spirit feels it. Elijah's collapse under the tree was not a failure of faith. It was a signal of depletion, and the response he receives is telling. God does not demand more effort. He provides rest. He restores before he redirects. That pattern remains relevant. Faith under pressure can feel isolating. Purpose, once clear, can begin to feel heavy. Reassurance, expected immediately, sometimes arrives later than hoped. But delay does not equal dismissal. Elijah learns that listening is as necessary as speaking. That recovery is not a detour from purpose, but part of sustaining it. That silence, though uncomfortable, can shape resilience more effectively than constant instruction. This is where many find themselves today. Committed, yet tired. Faithful, yet uncertain. Waiting for a word that does not come on schedule. Elijah's journey does not rush through that space. It allows it to exist. And in doing so, it offers a quiet assurance that seasons of silence are not signs of abandonment, but moments where strength is being rebuilt for what comes next. Elijah does not remain on the mountain. The whisper does not end his story. It redirects it. What follows is not spectacle, but instruction. Not a public moment, but a personal one. God speaks, and the words do not dwell on the past. They point forward. New names are given. New tasks are outlined. A future continues to unfold. The silence did not mark the end of Elijah's usefulness. It marked the moment his understanding deepened. He arrived at Horeb convinced he was alone. That belief had shaped his fear, his exhaustion, his desire to stop. But in the quiet, another truth emerged. God had been working beyond what Elijah could see. There were others. There was continuity. There was a plan extending beyond one prophet and one confrontation. The whisper corrected more than direction. It corrected perspective. Elijah learns that calling is not sustained by constant intensity. That strength is not measured by how loudly one stands, but by how faithfully one listens. That presence does not require display. God was not finished with him. He was reshaping him. The mountain did not erase Elijah's past experiences. It reframed them. Fire still mattered. Courage still mattered. Obedience still mattered. But they were no longer the only measures of faithfulness. From this point forward, Elijah's path changes. He becomes a mentor, a guide, a carrier of wisdom earned through endurance rather than confrontation. And in that transition, the story offers something enduring. God still works this way. Not every season is loud. Not every assignment arrives with clarity and certainty. Some come quietly, after rest, after reflection, after listening. The next step does not always announce itself. Sometimes it waits to be noticed. And so the question lingers, unresolved, personal, and quietly demanding attention. What if the silence you are in right now is not the end, but the invitation? Elijah's story has carried us from mountains of fire to caves of quiet, from the roar of confrontation to the subtle whisper that reshaped his path. And now, it reaches beyond him, into the questions that touch all of us. Have you ever felt that God was silent during a moment when every decision felt urgent? when clarity seemed just out of reach and your own strength was fading? Which part of Elijah's journey speaks to you most? The courage on Mount Carmel, the exhaustion under the broom tree, or the quiet realization on Mount Horeb? And looking forward, which Bible character should we explore next, whose story might reveal lessons hidden in moments of trial, silence, or unexpected guidance? Take a moment to share your thoughts in the comments. Reflect, consider, compare your own journey to the path Elijah walked. And if this story has given you insight, pause, or understanding, remember to like and subscribe so that the next story, another journey of faith, challenge, and discovery, can meet you here in the quiet where meaning often begins.